Welcome, dear listeners. Today in the Spotlight we'll be talking about whether there should be more emphasis on exams or coursework at educational institutes. I'm your host for today, Yahya. Joining us today is Aliasa.
Hi.
Daha.
Yep.
Abdulwasi.
Yeah.
And Hamza.
Hi.
Nice to meet you all. Right, so Abdulwasi, why don't you start off by defining what coursework is and what exams are?
Alright, so in coursework we're talking about work accumulated throughout the entire year or 2 years, and then that goes towards a grade you get at the end, and maybe a small test at the end of your exam study to tie it all together.
Yep.
And with exams we're talking about work you've been doing, it's not graded, and you get a final grade at the end of the 2 years or however long it takes, and then that will be your grade.
Okay, thanks for that. So let's go around, let's get some opinions of what we think. So Daha, go on, start us off.
Okay, so I'm just going to be, from my experience, because obviously I relatively recently I did my A-levels,
Yeah.
and my year did it a little bit differently compared to all the other years in the past, where you've got 2 years.
Yeah.
The first, before in the past it used to be first year was like your AS levels,
Yeah.
you did your exams at the end of the year, and then second year you did like your A2. Both of them went together to give your final grade. However, for now what they've done is there's no more AS levels. You do a mock exam to allow you to progress into the second year, but they've actually made it that at the end of the 2 years you do your exams, like at the end of the 2 full years, and only those exams determine the outcome.
Yeah.
However, if you're doing like biology or chemistry, you do stuff like practical experiments which do a small percentage of the grade. However, the exams at the end of the 2 years are the main thing, and I just feel as though it is a lot of stress, like all the topic.
Yeah.
And everyone has their bad days, and I just I want like more coursework involved,
Yeah.
because anyone can have a bad day, and just the fact that at the end of the 2 full years these exams are going to determine your progress throughout uni or in life in general.
Yeah.
I just think that's a little bit harsh on students.
Okay. Who wants to jump in on that?
I can see the value of coursework.
Yeah.
I'm in a unique position of being in the first year where it was cancelled because of COVID-19.
Yeah.
So I can understand how coursework would help me in that situation, in that through my work throughout the entire 2 years of my A-levels was graded, and then at the end, even though the exam was cancelled at the end, I got a good grade, or a grade that I had actually worked, instead of a random CAG, Centre Assess grade, based on what maybe the teachers thought of me, coloured in by that kind of prejudice. But it's because of that prejudice where it might just be what your teachers think of you, giving you a grade throughout the entire year. I can see the value of exams right at the end, to tie everything together so that I can do everything in one go, which is often required of you in a work environment.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I see.
Sorry, I just want to jump in, because the idea of having it as teachers assessing your grades and having prejudice is not really kind of what coursework is about. Coursework is when you do an assessed piece of work. It is assessed, but instead of having just the limited time of an exam to do it, where you've got obviously the pressures surrounding it, the unseen exam, you have time to research, to develop, to write an extended piece. Now, obviously, I've come from a background of humanities, which is different to some of you who have done it, who've come in through kind of more kind of science and maths, or the kind of STEM subjects, where maybe exams are better at the end because there's less need for coursework. But for someone who teaches history and teaches geography, coursework I think is better because it allows you to test the full range of academic skills available, needed to excel in in that subject. History is not just about who can memorize the most dates. It's about arguing an opinion, looking at a fact, developing kind of having evidence to back up your opinion, developing your argument, and concluding. And at university they have no issues with some courses just having coursework, primarily a lot of the humanities courses. At the start, early on, they have more exams, but towards the end, you can have you can choose modules which don't even require exams, because that's not the best way to test them. The best way to test them is through allowing for written essays, extended pieces of work, extended pieces of coursework. So I think.
What if I was to ask you a question? What if someone was to say in response to that teachers though can be discriminatory?
No, because we have moderation within schools, moderation within kind of teachers marking each other's work. So you could have a teacher who doesn't teach you moderating, marking your grades, and I'm happy with if because you'll be able to see discrepancies through control assessment, because if someone has been quite poor in their work, poor in their homework, poor in their kind of written work, obviously teachers have records of that, and suddenly the teacher's given them kind of full marks on a piece of coursework, there'd be raised eyebrows, why is there discrepancy?
I mean, what about bribery? Like you can bribe all the teachers, if you're rich enough, if you're lucky enough.
I think that falls more beyond the scope of this topic, because that takes kind of this because what you're touching on is that level of kind of our coursework as robust as exams, and I think that bribery issue takes it to an extreme which is very rare.
I do think the bribery is kind of rare, but it does raise an issue. What about coaching to pass the coursework? I know that when I was doing practical assessments for biology and chemistry, there were some people who quite frankly should not have passed those practical assessments, but the teacher just got us all in one room and said, listen, this is what you're going to write down, this is what you're going to do, okay, otherwise you won't pass.
Yeah, I mean, I think today, there's competition for places, especially for courses like medicine, and I've heard like older generation people say that today courses are watered down because of coursework. The A-level, for example, used to be known as the gold standard, where they used to have examinations after the 2 years, probably similar to what's going on today.
Yeah, it's kind of like reverted, it's gone back to how it used to be.
So that you would really distinguish between the good students and then the less able. I think what coursework has done, I think maybe it has watered it down. Like obviously Wasi mentioned, coaching, people maybe gain unfair advantage in terms of help. I think what an exam does, if you purely just have exams, that truly does test someone's ability to learn, to memorise, to work hard, so that they know at the end of the year there is going to be an exam, I have to work for this. If there's coursework, people can kind of say, oh, if I do well in this coursework, then I don't have to do as well here, I don't have to do as well in the exam to maybe get my B. Whereas I think if there is an exam right at the end, it does truly test your mettle. And say for subjects like biology and chemistry, where there is a practical assessment, and obviously that's in coursework now, that could be applied at the end as well in terms of an examination as part of, you have a written like theory exams at the end of the 2 years, and then you could have, practicals along with that. You don't have to incorporate into coursework.
But let me challenge you on that point quickly. So what if someone was to say that you have certain students who say that in an exam itself, I feel pressure because it's just on that day, there's like a spotlight on me, forgive the pun, for just that day how much I know. Whereas with coursework, I don't feel as much pressure. I can go back on it, I can work on it, I can show my best work.
I mean that's just life. There is pressure. There's always going to be pressure. I think that's the problem. We're making it so easy for people today, which is why I think people going to universities, it's so diluted. People can't get in because there's too many people with the good grades now, and so limited places. I think if you add that pressure back, it could maybe raise that standard again.
As someone who has obviously dealt with the pressure, I can say that counter argument is basically that courseworks, the thing about courseworks or just not even just courseworks, just grades throughout the year that added up at the end, is that it teachers, like students, can like if they've been doing well throughout the full 2 years. Whether if they like messed up on one exam or something like that, they could kind of make up for it, if you know what I mean. So for example, throughout the full 2 years, someone could be like a star student, and they could be doing really, really well, and you can look at like the predicted grades the teachers are expecting them to do really well. Unfortunately, on the exam day, they don't do as well, and they end up getting like a C. Whereas on the contrary, the opposite can happen, where a C grade student or even a D grade student could be doing, maintaining like C's and D's throughout the full 2 years. They got like a predicted grade of a C, but then at the end of the 2 years when they do the exam, they get lucky, they do really, really well, and they get like an A star. Would you say that student, and a lot of people would say that student who got the A star is not as good or as smart as a student who got the C?
Well, let me counter you with an analogy then. Say you're learning how to drive, so let's say you're taking lessons, you're brilliant, you're perfect on the manoeuvres, etc., you're brilliant at safety. Then let's say you get to the exam day and you mess up, you could have caused a major accident. Would you say because they were so great in the lessons we should pass them, or we should have given them a grade because they were so great while they were doing it, and then just ignore what happened in the exam? Or
well, what about let's just say
the test is to simulate like real life. And so when someone is obviously going for a driving test, and obviously I've felt that pressure, you're going to be more wary. It is going to test your skills in that scenario, because you are by yourself. When you're taking lessons, you've got the instructor to kind of bail you out. Whereas on a driving test, it is you, and that is you experience on the road by yourself. And I think that's what exams are. It's you ultimately, testing your ability. Well, obviously, if you mess up on the day, well, that's you. I think if you can't deal with the pressure, you're going to struggle in life, aren't you?
Okay, well, you can't say 100%. I know for a fact there are people who did pass the driving test first time and people who have passed the second time. And there are many people out there who passed the second time who I believe are much better drivers than those who passed the first time.
That is true.
So there's that, and that's what I mean about the exam statement.
I think what you've got to remember is, just like obviously move it on, but it's good. I think you've got to also remember that. We also have to remember that no system is perfect. Yeah. But can I ask you a question then now? Then we'll move on to a different point. That was a good discussion. In terms of for coursework, what do you think of the idea where some students say that coursework is good because it can raise my grade if I fail in the exam?
Yeah, so I think that's where this discussion is not should we do all exams or all coursework. There should be a mix. And what I think we need to realise is there's no one solution for all exams. All exams aren't going to be the same. There's no way you can do a woodworking exam without the practical element to it, which is the woodworking bit. Okay, you can't just do all theory. You need the practical bit. Similarly, you can't be expecting GCSE students to be writing kind of the philosophical theory of mathematics, right? Because they're two entirely kind of because that's way above their kind of level of understanding. So we need to tell. And as I said, things like maths, things like probably science. I'd say science to an extent, where you can take bits of everything that you've learnt and actually put it in the exam, because they all build upon it. They all build upon each other, and that kind of pressure, that kind of working, is you don't need any external resources to do so, right? But for other papers, such as history or geography, I think there should be an element of coursework to it, but it shouldn't. But obviously that coursework should be to obviously a very high standard, as needed, as required as an exam would require. Because I think if coursework is done properly, as universities do it, coursework is done properly is not easy. Having to go off and write an essay, okay, is not. If you're going to do it at home, it should be held to a higher standard, more higher scrutiny. We should be teaching people how to reference quite early on, and so that the actual level of that coursework, the standard of the coursework to pass, is a lot higher. So it requires so it's still, you know, saying that, okay, you know, you're not saying that people who don't work can use that to boost their grade, because it will still require a good kind of candidate to do so. It just tests a different skill set.
So what percentage, let's say, in a subject, would you say should represent coursework, and then say exam?
See, I think I do think it varies within topic to topic.
Well, let me pin you down, right? So you teach history, Alia, for anyone who doesn't know that. I also teaches history. So in history, if you had the choice, how much of the percentage would be coursework, how much of it would be exam?
So now you're putting it on the spot.
That's why it's called the spotlight.
That's why it's called the spotlight. But so without having to look at the actual history syllabus.
Oh, it's alright. Go on.
In total, I think there does need to be, obviously, there's this kind of level of argument, analysis of sources that needs to be done under pressure, because right now I'm under pressure to answer this question, so I've got to analyse sources, I've got to think about all the things that I know. I don't have any kind of script here, don't have any resources here, so I'm going to pull back things that I know and
so give us a figure, Ralph,
and use that to write an exam. So I think it depends on what we want to test in terms of history, and I think 50-50, maybe even 70-30 in terms of coursework.
Okay.
Exams, but really it would really kind of boil down to what skills are we actually wanting to test for history, and what is the best way of doing it. Okay.
Whilst I'll come to you, just to tell you though, I just did a bit of research. There's a literature review of someone called John Richardson in 2015. We'll leave a link to that article in the description. He found that coursework. He said that it does lead to an increase in marks. But he also said that coursework lessens the impact of an increase of class size. So class sizes, coursework actually mitigates that and helps people deal with that. What would you say to that?
Sorry, what did you say?
So he said coursework, it kind of lessens the impact of increased class sizes.
Oh, okay.
In terms of the results. So it kind of it's kind of a better discriminator in that sense. Because if you think, let's say someone was to make the argument that someone who's teaching 40 people or 30 people in a class for an exam has a harder time than, for example, if you have private schools where it's more one-to-one and more individual. So he's saying that coursework actually helps mitigate that. What would you think about that? What do you think about that?
Well, I can see the point he's making.
Yeah.
Class sizes, I do agree. If you have to teach a lot of people, then you're not going to get around to all of them individually. In GCSE, you've had this. You have to separate them all into sets, obviously, because one teacher can't handle all of them, and they've got different abilities. And when it gets to A levels, I noticed the teaching, especially for stuff like biology, chemistry, is so much easier to understand a topic when you've got one-on-one time with your teacher, or more one-on-one time. Okay, so coursework, I think, will also, have kind of the same effect as A level does on class sizes. Just the fact that if you don't need help with your teacher, then you can go off and do your own thing and succeed. Okay, if you do need help, then your teacher is there available, and it also helps to kind of encourage you to think about your own work rather than teacher writing. Okay, we're going to do this topic right from this page in your book. You're doing it. Nothing's really going in. Rather than the fact that if you go do coursework, you're forced almost to have a wider perspective on things. In terms of the effect of class sizes on via exams, I do agree that coursework is better for it. And in terms of exams, I think increased class sizes would.
I mean, if it is increasing class sizes, then obviously, you can't help everyone. If there's going to be students who are more clever than another. So let's say someone is teaching in a class, and someone picks it up, easier than someone else, and then you go back, and that takes time. So obviously, if there's more people, then there's more likely to be more people having more conflict in that regard. If obviously you've got smaller class sizes, then the teacher can probably personally know them better, know their skill and ability size, and it's easier to manage. And that's probably the same with coursework. They could probably the teacher could devote more time to, let's say 10 students and helping them with their coursework than 40 people.
Yeah, wow.
So one of the issues that I have with exams, and I'm not against exams, I think exams definitely have their place, but one of the issues that I have with exams is when it comes to the day of testing, you don't know what's going to be on the exam. So you could have an entire topic that you've learnt, you spent time kind of revised for, and suddenly it's not on the exam. So suddenly, you've lost out on an entire topic. Similarly, for exams, and as a teacher, where we are kind of schools and teachers are assessed based on kind of how many students they get through an exam. Okay, it then leads to certain teachers then trying to predict exam questions, predict the topics that are going to come up on the exam, and suddenly we end up prioritizing one topic over another. So in terms of kind of the curriculum, it's not a holistic study of the curriculum, even though the government says you need to teach the curriculum fairly. At the end of the day, teachers are humans, and they want what's best for the student. They want students to get good grades. They want the school to obviously do well. So they are going to kind of be focused on those questions or topics that are more likely to come up. And we as teachers end up actually devoting entire lessons on how to do the exam, how to answer, this type of question is going to come in the exam, how to answer this kind of question, and jumping through hoops. And I think that really is a question then of what is school meant to be doing? Is it meant to be, is it there just to pass exams, just to get students through exams, or is it meant to be giving students an entire view, an appreciation for the topic, appreciation for the subject, appreciation for education, and obviously there's no right or wrong answer to that, but I think that also clouds, and it does factor into whether we want more coursework or whether we want more exams. Obviously you can't, if you wanted to do an entire exam on everything on the curriculum, suddenly year papers are 3 hours, 4 hours long, and students are struggling with 2-hour exams already. So, how do you expect them to do a 3-hour, 4-hour exam? At least with the coursework, you can then test the entire curriculum, because at the end of every topic, you have an assessment that is based upon that. And I know there are some now exam boards, I teach EdXL, and EdXL are quite good at this, because they have 3 exams instead of AQA's 2 for history, where on 2 of the papers it's just on one topic, and then the third paper is a mixture of 2. So actually now the students know that on this first paper they know that everything that they revised on a certain topic is going to come up on that, because that's what that paper is for.
Yeah. No, that's great, thanks.
Sorry, just going back to the class sizes. As I was saying before, so teaching class sizes for exams, say if you've got a bottom set, okay, and one of the students or a few of the students have the ability to go higher, okay, they'd have, but then you've got someone who's about to fail, completely drop out, okay. As a teacher, you're not going to, if you've got like a 30 class size, okay, you're not going to really encourage put one-on-one time teaching on the people that could go higher, because you got a whole class to teach. You have to do the average, which means you're limiting the people. Now this might be a criticism of the set system rather than a coursework exam, but it does kind of factor in, because there's people that you think might fail. There's actually, I think AQA do it. I don't know if any other exam board do it, but there's foundation tier and there's higher tier. And foundation tier is an exam where you can't get higher than a C, okay, but the questions are easier. And now that's also a criticism of exams, because you're limiting people just by on the exam day. You are limiting people; they cannot get higher than a C, and that is due to the fact that you can't teach them in an effective manner throughout the entire year.
Yeah, no, I think that's a valid point, and probably a topic like for another discussion. We've got one more point, so I'll ask Daha about this, and we'll kind of wrap it up. What do you think about? Because you said very eloquently at the beginning about how AS and A2, and how it's all at the end of A2, right? And what would you say to the point where people say that, for coursework, they say, and you can look at this in a positive way or a bad way, they say that coursework allows weaker students to kind of get up to the level of the higher students. So would you agree with that? And if you do or don't, why?
I would actually disagree with that.
Right.
And the main reason is, it's so when obviously there's coursework, there's like different aspects to it, but when I'm talking about like coursework, it's like more assessments in general on each topic, just things that you can do each year that will contribute to the full grade rather than everything at the end of the year. So actually I think it's the opposite. I think it makes sure that people have to maintain high level of work throughout the full 2 years, because as I said before, a weaker student, someone who's been relatively weak throughout the full 2 years, he can he can like clutch it at the end of the 2 years.
Does that, let me, I need to pin you on that. Is that a reality?
Yes, it is. It can be.
It can be, but do you think that is what's happening out there?
Well, I definitely know that the opposite has been happening, where the stronger students at the end of the 2 years, obviously we mentioned before pressure and everything, but they've ended up, and obviously there's many factors, pressure, sometimes something they've been revising. Obviously you revise the full subject, but sometimes you give some things more priority, and unfortunately when that doesn't come into the exam, well, you've screwed basically.
But is it then an instance of, if you can't handle the heat, get out the kitchen?
Well, you can't really get out if it's if you're doing A level or GCSE, because that is.
No, I know it sounds cruel, but do you get the point?
Yeah, I guess. Right. Just give me a few seconds. Just need to think about that. Pop me on the spot. I don't really like being on the spot.
Could you just repeat what you just said there?
Okay. So what I'm saying, Dahe, is that people could say the old cliche of if you can't handle the heat, get out of the kitchen. I know that's it's a very blunt way to say it, and people like Al said very correctly, people don't have a choice. But is it one of those cases where if you can't handle the pressure of exams, you need to take it as a learning point? We don't need to look at exams in a negative way just because certain people can't do it.
Okay, so would you say that just because someone can be very, very smart but just not be good at exams, because doing exam questions is a skill in itself.
I agree,
so someone could be very, very forget passionate means you really like it, but someone could be very knowledgeable when it comes to something like biology and chemistry. However, if they're not good at exams, unfortunately they don't get a good grade. You've basically narrowed their choices in life. Like, what if they really want to do medicine? They have a lot of knowledge, and I'm sure with their knowledge they could have potentially made a very good doctor. But just because of exams, and they're not very good at exams, and just following the rules of how to do a proper question for each, but they might be very knowledgeable. Unfortunately, they now no longer have that career, and I personally think that's unfair. I think we should judge students throughout the full 2 years, look at the level of work that they've been maintaining, and judge them from that. Which is why, unfortunately, obviously, just due to COVID, students last year were given a predicted grade, but it wasn't random. It was actually obviously predicted grades from the teacher, and then the CAG, and then they looked at it and either bumped it up a little bit down. But the way the teachers give predicted grade, they don't do it on a whim. They look at the level of work students have been maintaining, either in classwork, homework, any assessments that they've been doing, and they've got it from that. And I think that was actually a very good way of giving someone a grade. There
is a slight issue with that, because I know teachers have, for the last kind of grades, they did overinflate the grades slightly, because they were worried that if the government come and scrutinise the grading, that they're going to be lowered. So actually there was, and I'd have to look at the stats. I don't think there was, overall there wasn't a grade inflation. I think there were more top level grades, but there wasn't a grade inflation. But I think there is that issue of teachers wanting to inflate their grades once again because they get judged on. Well, they didn't get judged on it last year, but they will get judged on it. The school gets judged on it, and I think that is an issue. That if we have coursework, maybe having an external examiner mark the coursework, maybe doing anonymous marking, where each student's given a code. They already are given a code, but to give a code and marked anonymously. I think that way is a way to mitigate that. I think then the issue is logistics, timing, and there's all the kind of other factors that come in with kind of if we introduce external examiners and all that.
Yeah. I think that's fine. I think we've had a good discussion today. So what we'll do is we just go around finally, just give 1-2 sentences to sum up what you think about it, and then what I want you all to do is, I know Al's done it, but you can redo it. But give me a percentage of what you think it should be, or a ratio. So 50-50, 60-40 of coursework to exams, which way you would go. So Al, go on.
So I think I'm not pro exams. I'm not kind of against exams. But I think there should be. I think we need to kind of really think about what are we, what's the purpose of school? Why are we teaching a topic, and then tailor exams, tailor coursework to that, to the intervening assessments, to that, to whichever skills we want. And if I was to have to give a percentage, as I said, it will vary based on subject to subject. But if I was to speak about my subject, 70-30, 60-40, 50-50 in that margin of exams and courses. We'll definitely have some element of coursework in there.
Nice, thanks. Daha?
I just want to say that I believe that, especially in the A levels, full 2 years, I think a person shouldn't be judged just for those papers that they did at the end of the year, but the full 2 years itself.
Okay.
And when I say coursework, I mean just exams at the end of each topic, so assessments in general, in which case I believe the percentage should be about 70 for assessments and about 30 for exams, just like a big exam, just to tie it up in the end. But they're judged throughout the full 2 years for the assessments themselves.
Yeah, I think courseworks are really valuable. I've known people that have been burnt by not trying to get to the end of exams until they get to the end of exams, and then realise there are no exams because of COVID, and then getting really, really low grades. I think having coursework maintains discipline. You actually have to learn, keep on top of it throughout the entire year. Maintains behaviour. Keeps behaviour problems in check. You can't just mess around on lessons. But exams at the end are super valuable because they give an insight into high pressure stakes, into learning everything, because you don't know what's going to be on that exam. Okay, so I would say 60% or maybe 55% coursework, and then maybe 45% exams.
Nice.
I would say finally, I think based on the way the education system is, especially from A level to university, it's getting a lot harder for students to get in, and I think the government or the academic institutions, they need a better way of sorting students, because I think a lot are getting the top grades now, and especially for courses like medicine, most want 3 A's. Most people are going to have 3 A's, and there's limited places for thousands of students that apply to a place that maybe only has 200. So I think maybe it should be more difficult. I think there should be more of an exam element and reduced coursework, so that it could distinguish between, I think, the bright students and those maybe who are capable of doing medicine, rather than those that maybe their grades have been inflated because of coursework.
What do you think?
So I would say. I would say percentage-wise, maybe 70% exam, 30% coursework.
Okay.
Over
well,
2
I'm the
years.
moderator, so I don't have to give an opinion. So, thank you everyone for being here today. Obviously, someone else is hosting, you'll hear my opinion today. But thank you for listening to this today. If you're listening on YouTube, please make sure to like, comment and subscribe. And if you're listening on any other platform, please make sure to obviously like or rate it. And also, if you could share it, because obviously this is the first podcast, and hopefully it'll motivate us. The more views, the more likes we get, to keep going. So thank you very much for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.